All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into chapter 4 of a totally fascinating source text called The World of Eternal Life. We are going to uncover a massive paradigm shift about life, death, and exactly how we view ancestor veneration. Whether you've got strong spiritual beliefs already, or you're just kind of curious about how different philosophies tackle the ultimate mysteries of human existence, you'll find that this text offers a highly structured, almost mechanical view of the afterlife and our connection to it. So let's kick things off by asking a seemingly simple question, one that totally challenges what most of us think we know about memorial services. Do our prayers actually help the dead? In so many cultures around the world, we're taught that frequent rituals, prayers, and offerings are absolute requirements to keep our ancestors happy and peaceful. But the source material we're digging into today, it flips that entire concept on its head, warning us that our good intentions might actually be missing the mark entirely. The text hits us with a stark reality right out of the gate. It suggests that our deeply ingrained cultural habits of endless mourning and obsessive grieving might actually be spiritually harmful. It's wild to think about, but the text posits that crying endlessly over a grave isn't a sign of profound respect. Instead, it's a sign that we profoundly misunderstand what death actually is. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. First, death is not eternal parting. Second, the danger of selfish memorials. Third, saving the living first. Fourth, the true foundation of memorials. And finally, number 5, the aesthetics of perishing. Section 1. Death is not eternal parting. Let's see how the text completely reframes the end of human life. Notice the huge contrast here between the narrow physical view of an ending and the much broader journey of the soul. The text asserts that intense, unyielding grief actually stems from an ignorance of this spiritual reality. According to the source, when we view death as an absolute, tragic finale, we're looking at the universe through a really narrow, purely physical lens. We're completely ignoring the larger metaphysical picture. This Japanese source material eloquently explains that life on Earth is basically like studying abroad in a foreign country. Think about it. You pack your bags, you go to a distant place to learn some really difficult lessons, but eventually the semester ends. Death in this framework is simply the flight back. It's returning to our true spiritual home. So it's not a tragedy, it's a graduation. Section 2. Danger of selfish memorials. This brings us to the hidden dangers of how the living interact with those who have returned to their spiritual home. The spiritual mechanics at play here are fascinating. The text explicitly warns against performing services just to ask ancestors for worldly favors. You know the type, please help me get this promotion, or please cure my illness. The text calls this a mindset of taking love. It explains that if your ancestors haven't actually made it to heaven and are suffering in a lower spiritual realm, reaching out to them with these selfish desires causes your spiritual frequency to synchronize with their suffering. Instead of helping them, you literally get pulled down into their spiritual disturbance. To drive this home, the text used this really striking specific phrase, becoming badgers of the same hole. It's a traditional idiom meaning two parties are equally complicit in a negative situation. Selfish desires from the living, combined with the unfulfilled attachments of the dead, drag everybody into a shared cycle of spiritual distress. It is essentially a toxic codependency that spans across the veil of death. Section 3. Saving the living first. So, if traditional requests for blessings are actually dangerous, what is the primary mission of spiritual practice? The original text explicitly lays this out. The absolute primary mission of religion and spiritual practice isn't about managing the dead at all. Its first and foremost duty is to save the souls of the living. The source argues that you cannot possibly hope to manage the afterlife if you haven't even figured out how to live properly in the present. The absolute crucial point here is this. You can't act as a beacon for lost ancestors if you're sitting in the dark yourself. You have to illuminate your own soul first. Think of it exactly like the oxygen mask instructions on an airplane. You have to secure your own mask before helping the person next to you. The text points out that constantly relying on ancestors is often just a sneaky way for the living to shift the blame for their own unhappiness. Instead, we have to take absolute personal responsibility and generate our own spiritual light. Section 4. True Foundation of Memorials. Let's look at how this philosophy redefines the actual process of honoring ancestors safely. This sequence outlines the strict progression required by the text. Step 1, you have to sever your own unhealthy attachments to worldly things. Step 2, you must actively study spiritual truth. Step 3, through that study, you work to enlighten your own soul. And only then, at step 4, are you actually capable of emitting a genuine, helpful spiritual light to your ancestors. It's completely an inside-out process. The text emphasizes that instead of obsessively repeating daily rituals out of fear, guilt, or looking for a reward, descendants should focus heavily on their own growth. True ancestor veneration is not a transaction. It's a natural byproduct of the living descendant becoming a brighter, more enlightened person. Your ancestors are honored by the quality of the life you lead right now. The source explicitly states that it is the power of enlightenment itself that reaches the spiritual realm to genuinely help ancestors. When you elevate your own mind, high-level spiritual beings can actually use your positive energy to reach down and pull your ancestors out of darker realms. Literally, your enlightenment becomes the tool for their salvation. Section 5. The aesthetics of perishing. This leads us to a really poetic concept about growing old gracefully, so we aren't the ones needing rescue later. What you should really take away from this is that perishing isn't some terrifying negative concept here. The aesthetics of perishing is framed as a beautiful, entirely necessary shedding of worldly reliance. It is the art of growing old gracefully, and not by clinging to youth or power, but by consciously untying the emotional and physical knots that bind you to this temporary world. The text specifically warns that older individuals have to avoid becoming stubborn. To cultivate this aesthetic, you absolutely must accept impermanence. You shouldn't guilt-trip your children or rely on them too heavily out of selfish attachment. You've got to maintain a humble, flexible posture, even being willing to learn from your descendants. That way, when you pass, you transition smoothly and you don't linger around as a heavy, demanding burden on your family from the afterlife. And the stakes are incredibly high here. The text warns that misunderstanding these rules has very real consequences. If a family is obsessed with selfish, transaction-based memorials, their household can literally be infiltrated by negative, manipulative spirits. They might think they're just honoring their beloved grandpa, but because their spiritual frequency is rooted in greed or fear, they attract entities that feed on that exact energy. The ultimate reality presented in this explainer is a deeply empowering, yet honestly challenging one. Both the living and the dead are bound by individual responsibility. You just can't outsource your spiritual heavy lifting. Your ancestors can't live your life for you, and you can't magically pray away their spiritual debts if they aren't willing to reflect on their own past. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought based on everything we've uncovered in the text today. When you look at how you honor the past and practice your own spirituality, look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you truly trying to emit light to help others, or are you just sitting in the dark hoping someone else will come along and save you? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this provided you with a powerful new lens through which to view life, death, and personal responsibility. See you next time.